The ocean stretched endlessly beneath a bruised sky, the horizon blurring into a smudge of silver haze. Dr. Marcus Hale leaned against the rail of the research vessel Endeavour, his hands gripping cold steel, his eyes fixed on waters that were somehow not like the waters they had passed through the day before. The sea here did not ripple with the restless tides he knew so well. Instead, it seemed to breathe, slow and deep, its surface shimmering between oil-dark black and flashes of pale, liquid light. He had studied countless seas across the globe, charted trenches and ridges unseen by most of mankind, but nothing in his experience resembled this. Behind him, the measured rhythm of boots on deck broke his concentration. Captain Elias Ward emerged from the wheelhouse, pipe clenched between his teeth, his shoulders hunched in a stance that suggested distrust rather than fatigue. Decades of naval service had carved the man into weathered stone, and Hale respected him enough to heed his instincts, even when they contradicted his own hunger for discovery. "You've dragged us to a cursed patch, Doctor," Ward growled, his voice gravel scraped across metal. "The crew doesn't like it. Neither do I. Compasses spin, sonar's blind, and even the gulls won't cross this line. That should tell you all you need." Hale turned, brushing salt spray from his beard. "If nature refuses to play by its rules here, then we're standing on the brink of something extraordinary. A discovery like this doesn't come twice in a lifetime." Ward's eyes narrowed, pale blue and cold as Arctic ice. "Or, it doesn't let you live long enough to have a lifetime." Before Hale could reply, a third voice rose from below, young and urgent. Samir Kadim scrambled up the ladder, clutching a tablet pressed tight against his chest. His face, lean and sharply cut, glowed with a nervous energy that betrayed both his youth and his obsession with patterns hidden in data streams. He thrust the screen toward Hale, breathless. "You need to see this. The sensors, when we cross into the anomaly, they don't go blank. They pulse. Look." His finger traced jagged lines across the screen, peaks and troughs rising in an eerie rhythm. "It's not random noise. It's steady, like a heartbeat." Ward spat over the rail. "Seas don't have heartbeats." Samir shook his head. "This one does." The three men stood in silence as the vessel drifted forward, the divide between ordinary ocean and the anomaly stretching before them like an invisible border. Waves rolled behind them in familiar rhythm, but ahead lay only stillness, a mirror of obsidian water so motionless it seemed carved from glass. Hale's pulse quickened, not from fear, but from the kind of awe that had driven him into the field decades earlier. He whispered, as if afraid the sea might hear, "The strangest thing Earth has ever hidden from itself." To test it, Ward grabbed a buoy from the deck and heaved it over the side. The object struck the surface without a sound and slipped beneath as though swallowed by a mouth that refused to splash. No trace remained. Samir exhaled sharply, his knuckles white around his tablet. "Gone," Ward muttered. "Just gone." The air thickened as night crept in. Clouds gathered, shrouding the moon, leaving the strange waters to glow faintly of their own accord. The sea shifted colors, black giving way to streaks of ghostly silver, as though lightning flickered far below without touching the surface. Then came shapes, faint outlines rising from the depths. At first Hale thought them illusions, tricks of weary eyes and restless imagination. But no, they sharpened, towering silhouettes that resembled spires, arches, or perhaps ribs of some unfathomable leviathan. They glowed with a dull blue radiance, fading and returning like breath. Samir whispered, "Structures. There are structures down there." Ward clenched his pipe between his teeth, saying nothing, though his hands tightened around the rail until the wood creaked. Hale could almost feel the sailors' silent battle between instinct and discipline, fear and the duty to see this through. The anchor rattled suddenly, the chain groaning. All three men spun toward the sound. The mechanism had not been touched, yet the links clattered over the side, lowering themselves into the waiting sea. The machinery stood still, unpowered, yet the chain continued unspooling as if summoned by something beneath. Ward lunged forward and seized the brake, straining against the pull. The chain jerked to a halt, trembling in his grip. Silence swallowed the deck. No wind stirred. No wave slapped the hull. The only sound was Hale's breath, ragged with the realization that this place was not merely strange water. Something down there was aware of them, watching. He looked at his companions, the grizzled captain locked in defiance, the young analyst caught between terror and fascination. The sea waited below, its secrets unspoken but undeniable. Hale's voice broke the silence, low and steady. Something down there knows we're here. The words hung in the air, heavier than the gathering night, a promise and a warning. Whatever lay beneath this sea, it would not let them go unchanged. You said. The morning broke with a dim and colorless light, as though the sun itself hesitated to touch the waters surrounding the Endeavor. Marcus Hale stood in the cramped submersible bay, fastening the last seal on his pressure suit. His face bore the taut focus of a man balancing wonder against dread. Across from him, Samir checked the calibration of the submersible's instruments, fingers twitching over controls with a precision that betrayed nerves. The glow in his dark eyes flickered between eagerness and fear, his youth wrestling with the enormity of what they were about to attempt. Captain Ward, arms crossed, leaned in the doorway like a statue carved from storms and salt, his gaze heavy with disapproval. "You really mean to go down there?" Ward said at last, his tone less a question than a grim accusation. Marcus met his eyes, without flinching. "The phenomenon isn't on the surface. Whatever secrets this sea holds, they're below. If we want answers, we descend." Ward drew the pipe from his teeth and tapped it against the steel frame. "Answers don't matter much when you're dead. Seas that swallow anchors don't invite visitors." Samir glanced between the two older men, hesitated, then spoke. "If this is a constructed anomaly, it could rewrite what we know about human history. Languages, civilizations, even physics itself. Think of what's encoded in those pulses." His voice cracked with conviction. "We can't turn back." Ward muttered something under his breath about fools and graves, yet when Marcus gestured toward the submersible, the captain followed. He had the look of a man unwilling to abandon his shipmates to fate, even if he despised the mission itself. The descent began with silence. The craft slipped beneath the surface, its lights cutting narrow cones through the obsidian water. Above them, the world of air and wind vanished as though it had never existed. Below, the ocean stretched into a void that swallowed sound and bent perception. The gauges jittered, dials spinning in drunken circles. Depth readings contradicted themselves with every passing second, declaring both 50 meters and 5,000. Samir's voice broke the quiet. "Look at the viewport." Through the thick glass, Marcus saw it, fragments drifting past like shards of broken dreams. A tree suspended in water, roots dangling into nothing. A stone archway half dissolved, its top vanishing into black. Faces, pale and fleeting, slid past as though painted on the currents, dissolving before recognition. The water itself seemed to be memory, fractured and bleeding into the present. Ward growled. "Illusions. Tricks meant to scare children." But his grip on the armrest tightened until his knuckles shone white. Then the seabed appeared, not a plain of silt and rock, but a city. Vast columns of hexagonal stone rose from the depths, their surfaces polished and gleaming like obsidian glass. Towers arched into impossible shapes, their foundations sunk deep into trenches that glowed faintly with veins of blue light. Glyphs ran across the walls in lines both familiar and alien, shapes echoing the languages of men yet belonging to none. Marcus leaned forward, awe etched into every line of his face. "Not natural. This is engineered. And not by anything we've ever recorded." Samir's breath fogged the glass. "It looks alive." The lights of the submersible flickered. Something vast moved between the towers, its presence betrayed only by a shadow that stretched across the ruins. Long, serpentine, impossibly large, it slid between structures with the silence of smoke. The water seemed to recoil from it. "There," Marcus whispered. "Do you see it?" Ward's eyes never left the viewport. "A shadow that shouldn't exist. And it's watching us." Samir swallowed hard. Not a creature. The readings, its projection. Some kind of sentry. A guardian. The submersible drifted closer to one of the spires, and there, lodged between stones, lay something human. A rusted diving bell, its iron frame warped with age, wedged like an artifact abandoned by time. Marcus pressed closer, heart pounding. Inside the bell, preserved in glass, a leather-bound logbook floated, sealed tight as though waiting to be found. With mechanical arms, they retrieved it, securing the object against the hull. Even through the murk, Marcus could make out faint handwriting across its cover. The words chilled him. We entered, but it was waiting for us. Before they could react, the current shifted violently. The submersible spun, dragged sideways as though the sea itself had chosen to expel them. Alarms wailed. Metal groaned. Samir clutched the console, shouting numbers that meant nothing, his eyes wild with panic. Ward braced himself, muscles straining against the pole, muttering curses under his breath. The shadow moved again, rising now, stretching higher than the tallest spire. It enveloped them in darkness. Then a voice, low and resonant, filled the comm system. It was not the sound of water, not static or distortion, but words, shaped in tones both mechanical and human. You are not the first. You will not be the last. The words reverberated through steel and bone alike, hollowing the cabin with their weight. Samir's breath came in short gasps, Ward's jaw clenched, and Marcus felt his resolve tremble on the edge of awe and terror. The sea had spoken, and its message was clear. They were trespassers in a place that remembered every soul that dared to enter. The currents relented as abruptly as they had begun. The submersible steadied, drifting upward toward the dim promise of the surface. Silence returned, broken only by the hiss of their own breathing. None of the men spoke. Each carried the same realization, unvoiced but undeniable. Something waited below, something built to endure time itself, something that judged all who came. The ocean above might let them leave, but the truth beneath would not be forgotten. As the first faint shimmer of daylight filtered through the viewport, Marcus closed his eyes, hearing the voice still echoing inside his skull. Not the first, not the last. The conflict had begun, not with weapons or violence, but with a question no man could ignore. What price must humanity pay to claim the secrets buried in the strangest sea on Earth? You said. The Endeavor rocked gently on the surface, but inside the cabin, the air was taut with unease. Marcus Hale spread the recovered logbook across the table, its brittle leather cover damp from condensation. He turned the pages with reverence, eyes drinking in the faded ink. The entries spoke of sailors in the 19th century, men who had stumbled upon this same sea, who had descended with the same fever of curiosity, and who had never returned. The last entry echoed in Marcus's mind. It was waiting for us. Ward stood nearby, arms crossed, his presence heavy as an anchor. We've seen enough. We got our warning, same as them. Only difference is we still have a chance to turn back. Samir leaned forward, his voice sharp. But don't you see? This proves it's real. The structures, the Guardian, all of it, it isn't legend. That city is history, preserved underwater, waiting for us. Whatever's down there holds knowledge we've never even dreamed of. His fingers drummed the tabletop in restless patterns. If humanity has forgotten entire civilizations, this place could tell us why. Ward's gaze hardened. And it could bury us alongside them. Curiosity is a fine thing, boy, until it feeds you to the abyss. Marcus lifted his head slowly, eyes moving between the two men. He felt the pull in his chest, the same relentless gravity that had driven him to the farthest corners of the globe in search of the unknown. Yet this was different. The sea had spoken, had measured them, and still he wanted to descend again. If this place was meant to remain hidden, it would not leave traces for us to find, he said, his tone deliberate. We've been invited, even if the invitation is dangerous. Ward barked a bitter laugh. An invitation to a grave. But Marcus's conviction had already taken root. By dusk, Preparations were underway for another dive, one more deliberate and better equipped. Ward joined them without argument, though his scowl never softened. He was not a man to abandon his comrades, even if he believed the cause was doomed. The submersible sank once more into the black water, its lights piercing the gloom. The city rose again around them, more defined now, as though the ruins themselves had been waiting for their return. The glyphs shimmered brighter, illuminating paths that wound between the colossal pillars. Guided by instinct and the faint pulses in Samir's instruments, they found their way to a vast dome at the city's heart. The submersible settled onto a stone platform, and to their astonishment, the water receded within the chamber. They stepped out into air that tasted metallic and old, yet breathable. Torches of crystalline light lined the walls, flaring alive as though awakened by their presence. The chamber stretched vast and silent, its ceiling lost in shadow. Statues ringed the interior, towering figures with elongated skulls and proud stances. Each clutched a globe of faint light, their expressions solemn, their eyes carved to stare eternally outward. Murals covered the walls, intricate depictions of battles against forces Marcus could not name, storms that bent the sky, beasts that crawled from fire, and human figures standing defiant in the face of annihilation. Samir whispered, "It's us. They're human. Or something so close it makes no difference." Marcus approached the mural, fingertips brushing stone. His chest tightened as he recognized the theme, not domination, but endurance. Humanity, fragile yet unyielding, carved into memory by hands older than any known civilization. This wasn't just a city, he murmured. It was a vault, a reservoir of who they were. A pedestal rose at the chamber's center, upon it a crystal orb pulsing with faint light. Samir, trembling, reached out and touched it. At once the orb flared, and visions spilled into the chamber. They were engulfed by images not seen but lived. Civilizations rising and collapsing in cycles of fire and flood. A people who built the sea itself, shaping its waters to preserve memory against inevitable ruin. Cataclysms from the stars, shifts of the earth, tides that consumed empires. The sea had been designed to test those who sought it, to ensure only the resilient could inherit what was stored. Samir staggered back, gasping. It's a memory vault. It records everything, and it's judging us. The air thickened. From the far end of the chamber, the guardian emerged, not shadow this time, but form. A leviathan of liquid darkness coiled into being, eyes glowing like mirrors of the sea. Its voice rolled through the chamber, not spoken but pressed into their minds. You trespass where only the enduring may stand. Answer, or be consumed. The great eyes turned to Marcus first. Knowledge. All you have sought, all mankind has lost. Yours to command. Accept and kneel. Marcus felt the offer tear through him. He could see it, endless libraries of understanding, the very keys to human origins. His knees trembled. Then the voice pressed into Ward. Power. The seas at your command, the storms your servants. Accept and rule. Ward's jaw clenched, his body trembling with the weight of temptation. He had spent his life at sea, humbled by it, defied by it. To hold dominion was the dream of every sailor, the vengeance of a lifetime against the waters that had claimed so many. Yet his lips curled into a snarl. Man wasn't made to rule seas. We're made to survive them. The Leviathan shifted, turning to Samir. Vision. Patterns of every future, every choice revealed. No uncertainty, no chance. Only clarity. Accept and know. Samir's breath caught. His life had been driven by numbers, predictions, and the search for order in chaos. The gift was everything he had ever wanted. His hand lifted involuntarily, then he clenched it into a fist. If we know everything, struggle means nothing. What makes us human is that we fight through the unknown. The Guardian's eyes blazed brighter. Marcus faltered, sweat breaking down his brow. Knowledge was the very marrow of his existence. To refuse felt like amputation. Yet Ward's defiance, and Samir's resolve pressed against his hesitation. He raised his voice, shaking but unyielding. "We don't need your gifts. Humanity's strength is not in what we're given. It's in what we make, what we endure." The Leviathan stilled. For a moment, the chamber pulsed with silence, then its form dissolved into shards of light that melted into the walls. The orb dimmed, the visions fading, leaving only the statues and their silent guardianship. The ground trembled. Cracks split the platform, water rushing back into the chamber. The sea itself seemed to roar in fury, its sanctuary collapsing. The men stumbled toward the submersible as torrents surged in. Ward sealed the hatch, engines straining as the submersible lurched free. Towers crumbled around them, pillars falling like giants slain. The city was collapsing, but not as ruin. It was vanishing, folding back into the impossible, its task fulfilled. Through the viewport, Marcus saw the last of the statues sink into the abyss, their globes extinguished. His chest ached with loss and triumph both. They had not claimed the sea's legacy, but they had proven themselves against it. As they rose toward the surface, the voice whispered one last time, faint and fading, "Endure." And Marcus knew the test was not over. It had only begun. The submersible broke the surface with a shuddering gasp, as though it too had escaped drowning. Rain lashed against the hull, though moments earlier the skies had been calm. The men clambered out onto the deck of the Endeavor, their bodies stiff, their faces pale with exhaustion. Behind them, the sea writhed as if in fury. Waves rose in towering arcs, crashing against one another, yet not a drop touched the ship. It was as though the storm was confined to the anomaly itself, the strange sea consuming its own secret as it collapsed inward. Marcus Hale gripped the rail, drenched in spray, his eyes locked on the spectacle. The waters that had glowed with spectral light now churned into chaos, spiraling like a whirlpool. Then, as suddenly as it began, the fury subsided. The surface stilled. When the clouds parted, only an ordinary stretch of ocean remained, featureless and calm. No trace of a city. No sign of the Guardian. Nothing but water stretching to the horizon. Samir sank to his knees, clutching his head. "It's gone. All of it gone." His voice cracked, carrying both despair and awe. Ward placed a heavy hand on the young man's shoulder. "Some things are meant to stay. Be grateful it let us walk away." His tone carried no mockery, only the weary certainty of a man who had seen the sea's cruelty too many times. Back on land, the world of offices and laboratories felt hollow. Marcus submitted his report to every agency that might listen, scientific councils, naval authorities, even private foundations, but his evidence betrayed him. The logbook disintegrated into dust the moment it left the ship's hold. The recordings Samir had taken were corrupted beyond recognition, reduced to static and distortion. The samples collected in sealed canisters evaporated into empty air. Each artifact that could have proved their story simply refused to endure outside the anomaly. Frustration gnawed at Marcus, but beneath it lay something deeper: acceptance. Perhaps the sea had intended it so. Perhaps its purpose was not to be catalogued and studied, but to leave its mark in ways no data could. Samir refused to abandon the pursuit. Night after night, he pored over weather charts, seismic readings, and electromagnetic anomalies. One evening, his voice trembled as he thrust a graph toward Marcus. "Look at this. Patterns, faint but real, embedded in atmospheric data worldwide. The sea is gone, but echoes remain. It's still whispering to us." His eyes burned with conviction, though they carried shadows of obsession. Ward, by contrast, walked away. He left the shipyard without ceremony, pipe clenched between his teeth, and vanished into the anonymity of coastal towns. The last words he offered them were quiet, almost fatherly. "You can chase secrets until the ocean swallows you whole, but remember, men aren't made to own the sea. We're made to endure it." Time passed. The memory of the sea lingered in Marcus's mind, not as a wound, but as a fire that refused to dim. He dreamed often of the mural in the chamber, humanity etched in stone, defiant against storms and shadows. In those dreams, he always woke at the same moment, just before the figures stepped forward, as if waiting for him to join them. One morning, as he stood on a familiar shoreline, the surf curling around his boots, a radio crackled from a nearby shack. The voice of a broadcaster reported a new anomaly, a stretch of Arctic ice shifting against all natural laws, compasses failing, satellites blinking out overhead. The description was unmistakable. Another sea, another secret. Marcus closed his eyes, the cold wind biting his skin. He could almost hear the Guardian's final word, whispered through the roar of waves. Endure. The knowledge did not fill him with dread, but with a strange calm. Humanity was not meant to master such places outright. They were meant to face them, to be tested, and to prove themselves worthy not by conquest, but by resilience. Behind him, the gulls shrieked and wheeled. Before him, the ocean stretched endless, vast and inscrutable. Somewhere out there, another sea waited. He knew that when the time came, men would stand before it again, just as they always had. Marcus whispered into the wind, a vow meant for himself and for whatever listened beneath the waves. Whatever waits for us, we'll face it as men. The tide surged around his legs, pulling, urging him forward. The horizon shimmered in the distance, hiding secrets no chart could hold, daring humanity to return. And he knew they would,